Chapter 1. An Invitation from the Abyss Evening. By the river, mist rolling in. Ming coughed and stubbed out the cigarette with an awkward laugh. "They say smoking relieves stress," he muttered, "but it's not doing much tonight." His phone lit up in his hand. He didn't need to look to know what it was. Another flood of hospital bills and medical records, a waterfall of figures that made his chest tighten. There was also a voice message from his father. "Minger, your mom spent over $5,000 at the hospital today. I'm sending you all the records." Irritation spiked in Ming. He sent a quick voice reply. "Dad, I told you not to forward me the bills." His father's reply came fast and bitter. "The expenses keep climbing, Minger. We can't keep this up. Your mother and I talked it over. We should stop the treatment. Your mom doesn't want to be a burden anymore." Hearing that, a hard wave of helplessness and sorrow rose from deep inside Ming. He had been living in this life for 20 years since transmigrating. In his previous life, he'd been an orphan. In this one, he'd clung to his family. He'd worked hard, good grades, a decent university, a steady job, until his mother's late-stage stomach cancer shattered everything. The family had burned through their savings in a little over a year. Now all of it fell on Ming, and he was running out of options. His parents had urged him many times to give up. He had refused. "There's only one path left," he thought. He reached into his pocket and felt the familiar hard edge of a dark blue card. He'd been finding that card for a month now, in a backpack, in a shirt pocket, by his pillow, appearing with uncanny persistence. Whenever it appeared, an interface surfaced in his mind. Abyss Invitation. This is the catastrophe of the heavens, and also the wild dance of the gods. Accepting the invitation will cast you into the struggles of countless worlds. Here, you can gain anything you desire, at the cost of possible death at any moment. Please choose carefully whether to accept the invitation. Yes, Ming had experienced transmigration once already. He could accept that this card was supernatural. It hadn't only been a threat. Since the card first appeared, a memory library had opened in his mind, populated with films and shows he'd watched in his previous life. Ming, who had been a film buff before, used the memories to borrow plots and scripts. Plagiarized movie ideas had made him quick money and kept them afloat. That was how he'd planned to save up enough to afford the experimental treatment his mother needed, $1.5 million per injection, but her condition had worsened too fast. For a month, he'd hovered at the decision screen, neither accepting nor rejecting. The cost, the risk of dying at any moment, had held him back. Who would gamble their life if they had another choice? But now, with his mother's life on the line and no money left, he realized there was nothing else to try. If he were the one lying in that bed, would his parents risk everything to save him? The answer was obvious. He tapped yes. The card flared into blue light and slid into his chest. Prompt tones rang in his head. "Ding, welcome to the faction, Abyss. Current rank, Trialist. Searching for Trial World, World ID 119, connected. Complete the mission to be promoted to a full member. Teleportation gate opened, countdown 1 minute. Advice from the Abyss, leave." A pale blue teleportation gate spun into being before him, a vortex that seemed to warn him he could not leave once he stepped through. Ming didn't care. He sent a short message to his father, told him he was going on a business trip, and transferred the last of his savings to his mother's medical account. He left a small fallback. A drawer at home held unpublished novels and scripts that could help his father later. Then he drew a breath and pushed into the gate. Light and shadow braided around him, almost beautiful enough to make him close his eyes. When he reopened them, he was in a cramped space strewn with clothes and the sour smell of sweat, a changing room. His clothes had been replaced by a retro jacket. His hands were wrapped in bandages. A small mirror hung on the wall. He leaned in and studied his reflection. It was still his face, only different, hardened somehow. A translucent screen blinked into view in his mind with a mechanical voice. Ming, Strength, 13, 10 plus 3. Constitution, 9. Agility, 14, 9 plus 5. Skill, boxing level 5. Points, none. Note, the average attribute for a normal adult male is 10. Values in parentheses are temporary bonus attributes from current identity. Identity? Ming flexed his fingers and felt the extra power. He didn't know how to box, and yet he had boxing level 5. Another prompt resolved the mystery. Abyss faction effect activated, identity implantation. Suddenly, a flood of memories poured into him, so many that he gasped and sweat prickled his skin, but his own consciousness remained intact. It was like watching a movie of another life while staying himself. He let the memories run through and pieced together the situation. The year was 1988, the place America, and he had replaced his parallel universe counterpart, a Chinese underground boxer who'd grown up as an orphan on the streets of a city called Gotham. Gotham. The name clicked with a memory from his film library, the American drama Gotham, with characters like Fish Mooney, a female gang boss. A ridiculous thought bubbled up. Were these worlds the Abyss sent him to just the film and TV universes he'd seen before? Had the Abyss been baiting him with stories he already knew? There wasn't time to consider it further. New prompts scrolled across his vision. Ding, world list searching. Search successful. Current world unexplored. Can be converted to an exclusive world after completing the main mission. Initial mission, evade pursuit. A chase from the start. Li Ming's jaw tightened. He had no illusions now. This would be dangerous. A heavy knock rattled the changing room door. He could hear hurried voices on the other side. The mission had begun. Chapter 2, Gotham. Li Ming checked the changing room carefully. There was no other exit. His body tensed, ready to fight, but then he opened the door. A hand shot out and hauled him back. When he saw who it was, he froze. This was the ring agent the original owner had always trusted. From the owner's memories, Li Ming knew the man well. "Run, it's too late," the agent hissed. He slipped a hat onto Li Ming and wrapped a scarf over half his face. "Why?" Li Ming asked, bewildered. The agent steered him toward the back door and complained, "It was a fixed fight. Winning gets you $120, losing gets you $300. How could he not pick the right side? Sal Maroni is furious. The Maroni family lost over 30,000 tonight. He's vowed to kill you to save face." They neared the back exit. The agent stopped, glancing around, and urged, "The Maronis are Gotham's second biggest family. You need to get out now. Leave Gotham if you have to. Go anywhere. The front entrance is crawling with their men. The back isn't surrounded yet. Hurry." Li Ming hesitated. "What about you if I leave?" The agent forced a smile. "Don't worry about me. We've worked together 3 years. I can't just watch you die." He shoved Li Ming toward the door. "Now go. Take care." Li Ming stared at him, then ran for the back door. Once out of the agent's sight, he broke abruptly to the side and doubled back, not toward the door at all. He found a hidden window, watched a moment, and slipped out when no one was watching. From a safe distance, he peered back. Just as he'd suspected, the area around the back door was packed with Maroni men. The agent had betrayed him. If Li Ming had been anyone else, he might have believed the agent's earnest face. This was Gotham, though. Trust was a luxury. He thanked himself for being cautious. His jacket buzzed. A phone rang in his pocket and drew the attention of several nearby thugs. Li Ming fumbled it out and silenced it. The caller ID, the agent. How was there a cell phone in 1988? He'd already noticed the show's timeline was fuzzy. Gotham in the 80s had technology that belonged in the early 21st century. "He's over there," someone shouted as a thug recognized him. Li Ming killed the phone and bolted. With the original owner's attributes, he shook off the first wave of pursuers, but more Maroni men were converging from every direction. When he burst past the boxing ring's perimeter, fresh thugs blocked his path. He slipped into an alley and kept running. The henchmen followed, then slowed when they saw the alley ended in a dead end. "They got you," one sneered. "Don't waste your energy. Maybe Maroni will only want one of your hands." "Ha ha ha!" Li Ming didn't panic. He'd grown up in Gotham. The original owner had known these streets like the back of his hand. At the end of the alley, he climbed a dumpster, pushed off the wall, and vaulted into an open second-floor window. Behind him, the thugs gaped. He locked the window and climbed to the roof, moving across buildings and changing positions until he finally lost them. Only after several blocks did he stop. He slid down into a stairwell and sat back against the wall, panting. His physical condition had improved since taking on the owner's body, but the sprint still left him exhausted. Judging by the neighborhood, he must be in Park Row, Fish Mooney's territory. The Maronis would be less reckless here. A small system ping ghosted through his mind. Initial mission, evade pursuit, completed. Reward, 500 points, 3 free attribute points. Main quest activated, rise of a new power. Mission, within 6 months, establish a new power. Evaluation by scale, mission only complete if at least C rank achieved. Establish a power in 6 months. Ming frowned. To be a power required authority, influence, territory, and that meant fighting existing gangs. Still, in Gotham, the fastest way up was to build a gang. Conventional methods, recruiting muscle, seizure by street fights, were risky. His strength barely outmatched an ordinary man, and the city's gangs used automatic weapons. He hadn't forgotten he had the plot advantage. Careful planning might create an opening. Besides, the Abyss had summoned him for a purpose, to cure his mother. Strange things happened in Gotham, resurrections even, and he would need influence to find them. He spent his 3 free attribute points all on physique. The original owner had been a malnourished boxer with chronic injuries. The added points raised Li Ming's physique to 12, and he felt the difference immediately. His limbs steadier, his breath easier. Bang! Bang! 2 shots from below yanked him fully awake. He peeked out. At the far end of the alley, an armed thug held a gun on a young boy. A man and a woman lay nearby in pools of blood, robbery, and murder. Li Ming didn't have time for moralizing. He pulled the phone from his pocket, hurled it with a precise snap, and shouted, "Look, a plane!" The phone struck the thug's wrist. The man howled and dropped his gun, clutching his hand. Seeing someone on the second floor, the thug fled the alley despite the dropped weapon. Li Ming didn't chase. He ran to the bodies and then to the boy. The boy's legs folded under him. He clung to the dead man and woman, shaking them with desperate, useless movements, eyes blank, until Li Ming knelt close. After a long, terrible moment, the boy began to wail. Li Ming crouched and checked the couple. They had no pulse. He put his hands on the boy's trembling shoulders, trying to offer warmth and steadiness. Gradually, the boy's cries slowed. "It's safe now," Li Ming said gently. "Don't worry, I'm here." After a while, the boy answered in a low, trembling voice, "Bruce Wayne. I'm Li Ming. You can call me Li." Li Ming was struck to realize it really was the Waynes. By a twist of fate, he had become Batman's unlikely savior. He scanned the scene. According to the story, someone else should be here. And sure enough, on a nearby stairway, he spotted a young Selina Kyle. Their eyes met for a second, and she bolted like a startled cat, scrambling up the steps and disappearing. Because this was the young Bruce Wayne, Li Ming knew his intervention had probably been unnecessary. In Gotham's version of events, the Wayne's murder had been ordered by the secretive Court of Owls. The court wanted to use Bruce to control the Wayne Corporation, so he hadn't been the intended target. "Bruce, may I call you Bruce?" Li Ming asked. "Yes." Li Ming stood and felt a small hand clamp the hem of his coat. Bruce was gripping him tightly, panic clear in his eyes. Li Ming understood that the killers hadn't meant to target him, but Bruce didn't know that. In the boy's mind, Li Ming was the one who'd saved him. "Don't be afraid. I'm not leaving," Li Ming said softly. He pointed to a nearby step. "Let's sit there." Bruce didn't object. They sat down facing the bodies of Thomas and Martha Wayne. Li Ming wanted to turn away, thought it would be better not to look, but Bruce held on, so he kept his eyes forward. Only when the boy's breathing slowed a little did Li Ming speak again. "How old are you?" he asked. 12. For a child of 12, Bruce's composure was remarkably steady. Still, he was staring at his parents' bodies, and Li Ming decided to try to offer something to hold on to. "It's a hard night," Li Ming said, glancing up at the hazy sky. Gotham's heavens were dull and starless. He forced a smile. "I was even younger than you the night my family. He stopped himself and pushed on. "I don't remember everything. It was a dark night. There was a shootout. I don't know where the bullets came from. I only remember my parents falling." He met Bruce's wide, wet eyes. "There wasn't a single murderer. In a way, Gotham itself is the murderer." Hearing that someone else had known a similar loss, Bruce seemed to draw closer to him. Li Ming patted his shoulder and pointed at the sky. "Gotham's sky is dark. You can't even see a single star. But that doesn't mean we stop searching for the light." He said it earnestly. "Be strong, Bruce. Live well. If nothing else, be the star that lights your own way." Bruce nodded, small but determined. "Stars." If the stars are bright enough, the boy muttered, can they light others? If someone can hold back the criminals, then maybe our tragedy won't happen to others, Li Ming answered. That's right, Bruce said. Li Ming was surprised that a child could think like that. Could this really be the future Batman? Li Ming clenched his fists unconsciously. Helping to stop criminals wasn't something he'd planned for. He was a boxer who wanted a comfortable life, not a crusade. It's a hard path. A boxer being hunted, he added with a half smile. He didn't want to be a hero. He wanted to survive, maybe be a little selfish to keep himself safe. Bruce, though, was already thinking of others. If you need money, I can help, the boy blurted. Not now, Li Ming replied, smiling. I'll handle things myself for a while. If I can't, I'll find you. It wasn't the moment to make demands. Better to leave a good impression. If you ever need anything, come to Wayne Manor. Bruce's face set. Okay. Li Ming glanced around. Someone had surely called the police. Detectives would be arriving soon. The Gotham Police Department wasn't free of corruption. If Li Ming's presence here leaked, it could complicate everything. He was about to move when Bruce's hand tightened again. How do I find you? Bruce asked. What's your phone number? Li Ming remembered the phone he'd thrown away and retrieved it. The screen was cracked, but it worked. They exchanged numbers. Don't tell anyone about me unless you really trust them, Li Ming said. Especially not the police. Okay. He said that because he already had an idea who would be investigating the Wayne's murder. Jim Gordon, the upright, angry rookie with a badge and a conscience. Jim had only recently joined the Gotham PD and was full of righteous heat. Li Ming didn't want to become Jim's friend. Gordon's friends rarely had quiet lives, but if he could be linked to Jim through Bruce, it might make some things easier down the line. Li Ming didn't leave right away. He found a tucked-away corner where he could hide in shadow and watch. The Waynes' deaths were seismic. Their murder didn't just start the story of Batman, it destabilized Gotham. Thomas and Martha had been pillars of the city the way Carmine Falcone was another pillar in the underworld. With the Waynes gone, Falcone's hold would be harder to maintain. His lieutenants and rivals would start circling for power. Mooney, Maroni, others, and chaos would follow. If the chair of Gotham's overlords could fall, why not the rest? Among the hungry and ambitious, one name struck Li Ming as useful. Oswald Cobblepot, Penguin. Right now he was a small-time operator but single-minded. Unlike many of Gotham's villains, some driven mad, some bent on ruin, Penguin had always been focused on building a career. That made him dangerous, but also manipulable. If Li Ming wanted to profit, to pull strings in the criminal underworld without getting his hands too dirty, Penguin was the best candidate. He had ambition and a weakness Li Ming could exploit. Better to guide Cobblepot into a position that served Li Ming's purposes than to wait for the bloodletting that would let some other hyena swallow the city's scraps. We will bring the murderer to justice, sir. Jim Gordon's voice broke the thought as he stepped into the light. He spoke with the kind of blunt conviction Li Ming had expected. A middle-aged man who had come to Bruce's side folded the boy into his arms, and Bruce's grief broke anew. That's new here, aren't you? The man asked the detective. You could say that. Jim looked out of place, but determined. The man giving comfort was Alfred. He studied the detective and the situation with a quiet, appraising look, then turned his attention back to Bruce. Alfred's tone softened. Chin up. Hold your head. Don't let anyone see you cry. Bruce took a breath and, with a force of will too old for his years, steadied himself. Alfred thought, the young master had grown up a lot in one terrible night. Alfred, Bruce said suddenly. Yes, young master? Buy me a new phone. Alfred blinked. Yes, young master. He was baffled, but Li Ming, still half hidden in the shadows, had to smile slightly. The promise of that cracked screen had set something small in motion, a connection, fragile and private, between a fugitive from fate and the boy who would one day wear a cowl. Chapter 4, The Penguin. It was barely dawn, and Gotham's criminals were already in a state of panic. Gordon and his partner Harvey Brock were everywhere, hunting down thieves, looking for clues about the murder of the Waynes. The city's underworld felt like prey surrounded by hunters. Oswald Cobblepot walked the alley outside a bar, watching the arrested men with disdain. He despised those who relied on brute force. To survive in this business, you needed brains. something Oswald had in abundance, even if his small, frail build and lack of fighting ability made him vulnerable. He flinched whenever anyone called him by that humiliating nickname. "Hey, Penguin." The voice made Oswald's face harden. A group of tall, burly men closed in. He forced on an ingratiating smile. "Hi, Kenny. What can I do for you?" He'd been bullied his whole life because of his appearance, so he knew when to bend and when to resist. The bearded man in front of him grinned sleazily and leaned in. "When's Fish coming back today?" "You know I can't reveal my boss's whereabouts," Oswald said, keeping his smile. Seeing the men step closer, he added quickly, "I'm free until 4 this afternoon." That was a clear hint. Oswald was Fish Mooney's umbrella boy, and being free until 4 meant he could be taken advantage of. "Good job, Penguin." Kenny slapped him on the cheek with satisfied contempt and led his men away. Oswald's smile dropped the instant they were gone. He watched them go with cold eyes. "You lied." A voice came from the shadows. Oswald turned. Li Ming stepped into the light, having been there for some time. He regarded the scene with an amused calm. Penguin relaxed when he recognized the newcomer. Li Ming's presence suggested opportunity. Though a villain in his own right, Oswald was fiercely loyal to those he called friends, which made him more useful than the upright, untouchable sorts like Gordon. He had spent his life calculating whom to submit to and whom to betray. "You've come to join Fish? Not a bad idea," Oswald said, taut with ingratiation. Li Ming smiled faintly. "Fish might not have time for you, though." Oswald took the comment in his stride, putting on airs. He was always arrogant toward anyone he considered beneath him. This boxer seemed like a low-level nobody. "I'm not looking for Fish. The Maroney family's never threatened me." Li Ming didn't let him off the hook. If he was going to deal with someone like Oswald, he had to take the lead. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Li Ming. You can call me Li." Oswald's slick charm slid into something sharper. "I'm here for you, Oswald." Li Ming's eyes were steady. "They're stealing Fish's money, aren't they?" Oswald hesitated, then gave a small, reluctant smile. "Yes, Kenny takes money from the bar every week, thinks no one knows. But I know. Fish'll be back at 2 this afternoon. Kenny's finished." Oswald's voice warmed with the pleasure of impending revenge. He lived in the moment. He never waited. Li Ming clapped once quietly. "Bullies always look down on the weak with arrogance." "But they don't realize an elephant hated by an ant is still in danger," Oswald replied, puzzled but pleased at being understood. "You did well, Oswald," Li Ming said. The words struck something in him. He didn't have many people who acknowledged him, not since his mother. The admission left him awkwardly grateful for a moment. Gotham was crumbling into chaos, Li Ming noted as he leaned in. Falcone was old, and new forces were rising to fill the vacuum. "Someone will take his place," he observed, watching Oswald's eyes. "Who will be the ultimate winner? Who will become the king of Gotham?" Li Ming asked slowly, naming the obvious candidates. "Sal Maroney," he said, watching Oswald shake his head. "Fish Mooney?" Oswald refused even that. Fish might be his boss, but if she ruled Gotham, he'd always be just an umbrella boy. "Other small gangs?" Again, Oswald dissented. Li Ming let the silence hang, then offered another possibility. "If any of them can, why not us?" "Us?" Oswald's heart thudded. The notion was intoxicating and improbable at once. He had the nerve to imagine overthrowing his boss someday, but King of Gotham felt far beyond his ambitions. Still, Li Ming's words held a key promise. "You want to recruit me?" Oswald asked with a half-smile, flattered but cautious. He wasn't the type to switch leaders lightly. "Not now," Li Ming said calmly. "I'm just getting to know you. When the time comes, I'll come again." And then he walked away, leaving Oswald gaping. Li Ming didn't think a few flattering words would put Penguin at his feet. He knew Oswald's pattern. Toward the powerful, he would first submit, with the aim of one day replacing them. Toward those he acknowledged as friends, he would be fiercely loyal. If Gordon could gain Oswald's trust by sparing him in the past, Li Ming believed he could use a similar method. Li Ming's plan was simple and patient. Let Oswald fall, then appear as salvation. Despair first, then rescue. Let the grateful man come willingly. It was a dangerous game, but Li Ming was already thinking several moves ahead. Oswald watched him go, a mixture of excitement and new uncertainty roiling inside. He didn't yet know what being wanted like this might demand, but for the first time in a long while, Someone had offered him a future beyond serving umbrellas. Chapter 5. The Reason for Being Hunted. Ming didn't idle after leaving the fight. He methodically went over everything that might explain why the man whose body he now wore had been marked for death, and a number of suspicious details emerged. The original had been making a living in the underground boxing circuit. The night before, someone from the Maroney family had sent a message offering him $300 to throw a match. The arena wasn't officially Maroney territory, but everyone in Gotham knew their reach, and the original didn't want to offend them. Besides, he made only $100 or $2 for a win. $300 to lose was easy money. So he agreed. But the match never played out the way anyone expected. As soon as it started, before the original could even work the crowd, his opponent landed 2 light, exploratory blows and then went down cold. The referee declared a knockout. To those watching, it appeared the fighter had been floored fair and square. Sal Maroney, who was there that night, was furious. Had the opponent been bought off too? Ming's first thought was that the opponent had taken a payout, but the memory didn't fit that theory. The punches had been soft, as if the man was not deliberately going down, but had been drugged. Sifting the facts together, Ming reached a more plausible conclusion. Maroney had wanted the original to throw the fight to make a fortune inside the casino, but somebody else had tried to manipulate the same outcome, and done it more brutally. That unknown party had doped the opponent, creating the knockout that incriminated Maroney. To Maroney, this looked like betrayal. To the schemer, framing a powerful family was a way to destroy them. The original had been nothing more than expendable cannon fodder. For the powerful, it was money lost. For the small, it could be the price of their lives. The agent who took part in the setup was probably already disposed of, thrown in the river, Lee guessed. He wanted a name. He wanted the mastermind. Avenging the original would mean finding who had set the trap. Near the underground arena, there was a tiny clinic. Underground boxers had no insurance. They patched themselves up after fights, and a number of neighborhood clinics made their living off swollen knuckles and stitched brows. Ming knew, from the network of rumors that spread through the pits and alleys, that this particular clinic was owned by someone with ties to the arena. That kind of double-dipping was common in Gotham. He wrapped himself up and found a brown-haired street kid loitering by the curb. He pressed $1 into the boy's hand. "Go ask if Walker Simpson is inside," Ming said quietly. "If he's not, ask where he went. I'll give you another $1 once you find out." $2 to ask a single question was a fortune for a street kid. The boy took the bill, glanced at Ming once, then slipped into the clinic. He came back almost immediately and pointed at the third window. "Walker's in there," the kid said, voice low. "But he's dead." Ming wasn't surprised. He had suspected a cover-up. "How did he die?" "I dunno. They brought him in, and he just died. Not long ago." The kid shrugged. With the trail cut off, Ming planned to move on, but he paused and flagged the boy. "Don't stick around here for a few days. Change where you sleep." If the kid had seen too much, someone with a mind for trouble might notice him. The boy nodded like he'd been given a kindness, and then called back before Ming turned away. "Sir," he hurried up, breathless. "I saw some guys from the Nikolai family go into that room last night. I don't know if it helps." Ming's attention snapped back. Nikolai. He had a vague memory. Another small-time boss in Falcone's orbit, one who kept a low profile. He and Fish Mooney had a public rivalry that hid a private understanding, he remembered. They played at hostility to keep Falcone off balance. But before Nikolai could capitalize on anything, Penguin had lured him into a trap and killed him. If the kid's sighting was accurate, it meant someone connected to Nikolai might have been nearby the clinic when Walker died. "Very useful," Ming said. He cut another $5 and handed it to the kid. He was generous. If he needed more help later, money would be the easiest currency to trade for information. The boy introduced himself as Peter and said he'd be around the Diamond District nightclub if Ming needed him. He promised, earnestly, not to talk. Lee made a note of the name and the neighborhood. There were too many stray kids in Gotham to trust them entirely, but sometimes one of them saw things the grown men missed. If Nikolai's people had been involved, Lee could combine that with what he already knew and build a better picture of who had wanted to set Moroni up. He might as well see what else Nikolai had to hide. While Lee set his own plans in motion, other events in the city were accelerating along familiar lines. Park Row, the block where Thomas and Martha Wayne had been murdered, was Fish Mooney's turf. To keep the investigation quiet and to cut the city's uproar short, she and Falcone staged a cover. Fish planted a fake pearl necklace as evidence and found a petty criminal with a record to make a convenient scapegoat. That gave the Major Crimes Unit a neat resolution, an arrest and a neat story to tell, if anyone in the department was willing to play along. Oswald Cobblepot saw an opportunity in the mess and tried to use it. He alerted detectives in the Major Crimes Unit to Fish forging evidence and framing an innocent man, hoping the revelation would topple her. Oswald, still early in his rise and not yet as cunning as he'd later become, misread some loyalties. One of the detectives passed the tip to Barbara, Jim Gordon's girlfriend, thinking her influence might separate Gordon from any corrupt alliances. Barbara, however, trusted Jim. She told him what she'd heard. Jim Gordon, never known for a patient approach, immediately confronted Fish. Instead of negotiations and quiet compromises, Gordon went straight for the center of the problem. Fish, who preferred to avoid messy investigations, decided on the simplest solution to silence trouble: eliminate the troublemakers. Gordon's impulsiveness had betrayed Oswald. Both Gordon and the young penguin found themselves on the wrong end of Fish's wrath, facing very real danger. Li Ming had watched the pattern before. He knew when Fish turned on adversaries, she preferred clean, brutal endings. He estimated the crisis would come to a head within days. He also knew how the plot, if unaltered, would play out. Penguin would survive, and the resulting favor would belong to Gordon. Lee wanted that favor. So Lee planned a small deception of his own to make it look like he had saved Oswald. If he could manufacture that debt, he would have a foothold in the city's underworld influence network. During all of this, Bruce Wayne called Lee and asked him to attend the funeral for his parents. Lee went, but not visibly. He kept his distance and watched Bruce from afar. The city was centered on the grieving heir, and it wasn't the time to draw attention. The next morning, Lee stood on the Gotham Pier with a cup of coffee, staring at the gray river that had been witness to so much of the city's dark business. The water reminded him of the day he'd accepted the Abyss's invitation, of choices made in silence. Footsteps tapped behind him. He turned. An older man with white hair and a beard walked up the dock with a brisk, purposeful stride and eyes that took everything in. Lee smiled. This was who he'd been waiting for. "Sorry to trouble you so early," Lee said, raising his coffee in greeting. "Mr. Falcone." Chapter 6, Falcone. As the head of Gotham's largest crime family, Carmine Falcone was no fool. But like Nokia crumbling under the onslaught of smartphones, Falcone was struggling to adapt to changing times. Gotham's steady stream of supervillains and new criminal methods was overwhelming this old-school mob boss. He had even flirted with the idea of retirement. In the end, the story went darker. He was killed by his own daughter. In that regard, Penguin was the tougher survivor. Another old-school boss who kept up with the trends and refused to be outmaneuvered. Still, Falcone retained ambition and prestige. He was the man whose name made ordinary Gothamites, criminal and respectable alike, sit up straighter. "Of course I wouldn't accept an invitation easily," Falcone said, his voice more gentlemanly than menacing. "But the gift you sent is unusual." He stood with several hulking men behind him, and one of them had already whispered that the visitor was Li Ming. Falcone narrowed his eyes as he approached. "I didn't expect the man who invited me to be a boxer on the run. Are you seeking asylum?" "No." Li Ming smiled, calm and unflappable. "If I were seeking refuge, why come all the way to Falcone in person?" "I'd rather you were seeking refuge," Falcone said. "Otherwise, things become very troublesome." Li Ming's composure made Falcone gesture to a subordinate to hand over the gift box. It was the very package Li Ming had sent by the street urchin Peter to Falcone's house, the reason for this meeting. Falcone's address was public knowledge, but even his rival Moroni dared not strike at his home. The prestige of Gotham's top don was real. With the men dismissed until only the two of them could hear, Falcone continued. "At first I thought you were one of them, but then I realized you weren't." If they wanted to talk to me, a phone call would do, Li Ming replied. Falcone opened the box. Inside was a Court of Owls mask. Court of Owls, Li Ming supplied. A coven of cowards who control Gotham. Since you're not one of them, why come to me? Falcone's voice was calm, but he kept a hard edge. If Li Ming proposed an alliance to overthrow the Owls, Falcone had every intention of tossing him to the fish. The Court of Owls was a shadow organization and a sworn enemy of the Waynes. Their reach was legendary. Li Ming didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, I'm not an official member of the court, but perhaps you've heard of Talons. Falcone's expression changed. Talons are the court's pawns. Of course I've heard of them. He sized Li Ming up anew. A Talon contacting me off the record isn't a good sign. Would you like me to call the court? Falcone probed, trying to steer the conversation. Li Ming stayed relaxed. Go ahead. Call Catherine. They'll thank you. It won't change what's coming. Naming a member of the court gave Falcone pause. What's coming? To destroy Gotham, Li Ming said flatly. Falcone, who had seen a great deal and been party to more schemes than most, was stunned. Impossible. The court controls everything. Everyone, wittingly or not, works for them, Li Ming insisted. They don't destroy their own foundation. Falcone took that in. He believed, as most did, that the court would not deliberately cut off its own base. And yet he had seen the court outlast generations. They had reshaped Gotham more than once. Li Ming kept talking, filling in a story built from fragments he'd gathered. The Waynes thought the same before they died, Li Ming said. That name hit a nerve. Falcone knew who had cleaned up after the Waynes' deaths. He knew how dangerous that sort of accusation could be. That doesn't prove anything, he said. Whenever Gotham reaches a certain point, those in power will tear it down and remake it to cement their hold. The court has done it twice already, Li Ming said with conviction. Falcone remembered the city's two great reconstructions, each time seeing the power structure reshuffled while the court remained untouched. Li Ming pressed on. There are divisions within the court. The hardliners want to force chaos to justify a full purge. The deaths of the Waynes were a fuse thrown by those hardliners to push Gotham over the edge. Li Ming's revelation was a fabrication. He was stitching together facts and rumors into a plausible narrative, but that was his advantage. By presenting fragments in a coherent pattern, he created an information asymmetry Falcone couldn't ignore. The Don, who prided himself on reading people, paused and thought it through. He could see how such a plan would fit the court's historical methods. Falcone laid the gift box on a dock pillar and pressed his palm against it, as if to feel the weight of the secret. When? He asked at last. When Gotham's underground order collapses, Li Ming answered softly. Falcone inhaled sharply. Gotham's order will not collapse. I don't doubt Falcone's power, Li Ming said. Not if the court's radicals don't intervene. Silence settled between them. If the Court of Owls could arrange the Waynes' deaths, they could interfere with Gotham's criminal equilibrium. Falcone replayed Li Ming's words, and a realization sharpened. Li Ming had claimed the court was divided and had come bearing inside knowledge. That wasn't the behavior of a traitor aiming to topple them. It looked like someone sent to shore up what could be lost. Falcone's face hardened. He understood then. Li Ming had not come to recruit or to flee. He'd come because a conservative faction within the Court of Owls had ordered him to. Chapter 7. A Sudden Transformation. Falcone stared at Li Ming. Which faction are you with? Not the radicals, Li Ming answered. Falcone relaxed slightly at that. As the head of Gotham's largest crime family, he had every reason to fear the Court of Owls' radical wing. They wanted to remold the city without asking him, and that put him squarely on their purge list. The court's power ran through the city. Officials, corporations, even the mayor had ties to it. Alone, Falcone wouldn't dare resist. But Li Ming's arrival, and the simple fact that he was a Talon, meant the court had split. That division offered Falcone a sliver of hope. If Li Ming came from the conservative faction, then he could be an ally. Li Ming read the change in Falcone's expression and allowed himself a small, warm smile. I almost thought you were just a boxer and nearly tossed you into the sea, Falcone said, forcing a teasing tone. His nerve was impressive. Even faced with life-changing news, he could joke. I am a dark Talon of the court, Li Ming said. Very few within the court even know I exist, and only a couple know my true identity. Of course, Li Ming added smoothly. Even if the radicals captured me, no one would admit who I am. He was framing his cover carefully. He wasn't worried about exposure. Falcone couldn't go to the court for verification, and in truth, despite years of dealing with them, Falcone had almost no direct contact beyond phone calls and a few intermediaries. His knowledge of the court was patchier than Li Ming's. "So what's the plan?" Falcone asked. "Given the radical faction's strength, those behind me can't provide me with open material support," Li Ming said, "but they can share intelligence." Falcone had guessed as much. Intelligence could be just as valuable as manpower. With the right information, things could be turned. "My faction wants me to set up a force," Li Ming continued. Falcone blinked. He had expected Li Ming to operate behind the scenes, not build a power base. He worried. Was this meant to replace him? Li Ming saw the flicker of suspicion and answered before Falcone could voice it. "You don't need to worry. Me building a force is a safeguard, for you as much as for me." "What kind of safeguard?" "Suppose one day you want to retire. I can take over, and you can step back without fear. If the radicals win, at least your life will be spared. You can hand the businesses to me or leave them under your people's management." Li Ming sounded indifferent about Falcone's enterprises, and his priorities were twofold. Finish the main quest and find a cure for his mother's illness. Falcone considered the offer. Anyone could make grand promises, but Li Ming pressed on. "Don't worry, I'm a pawn of the faction too. As long as I remain, the faction won't interfere with your retreat. I'm not one of those court talons who expect to die on command." Falcone clapped him on the shoulder, visibly relieved. A guaranteed fallback was better than none, even if he had no intention of retiring now. "All right, I'll help you set up a force." Li Ming was quietly pleased. With Falcone's backing, his mission would be far easier. Other reincarnators arriving in Gotham would likely have to carve out territory and be consumed by the city's entrenched powers. Li Ming had cut to the center. He had convinced the crime boss to make him a prince. "Most of Gotham's territory is already claimed," Falcone warned. "I can't just hand you my districts." "Then we start by cleaning house from within," Li Ming said with a faint smile. Falcone reacted instantly. "Who's the problem?" Betrayal was common in Falcone's world. His real question was the target. "Fish Mooney and Nikolai," Li Ming said. "They play enemies in public to make you let your guard down, but they're actually working together to overthrow you." Falcone's face remained composed, but his voice dropped. "That is surprising. Do you remember the pearl necklace you gave Fish?" "Of course." "Fish has a subordinate, Oswald, who reported her for fabricating evidence to the Major Crimes Unit. That information leaked to Detective James Gordon, the one investigating the Wayne case." Li Ming let that hang. "You know Gordon, don't you?" "Yes, I was close to his father." "Then you know Gordon is impulsive. He won't sit on this. He'll confront Fish. Fish will eliminate both Gordon and Oswald to stop the leak." Falcone listened, increasingly impressed. Li Ming's intelligence and his reading of people's motives showed why the conservative faction had chosen him. "So what do you want me to do?" "I want you to step in, save Gordon at the right moment, and secretly spirit Oswald away," Li Ming said. "If anyone asks, say Gordon killed Oswald. It will make Gordon look ruthless and prove his allegiance." "And Oswald?" "I'll arrange for him to become an undercover agent in the Maroney family. It kills two birds with one stone." Falcone smiled, genuinely pleased. Li Ming's plan wove together multiple threads of Gotham's underworld into a single, clever strategy. Li Ming added one final, almost personal request. "And tell Oswald that the one who saved him was me." Chapter 8. Penguin's Gratitude. Yesterday had been one the young Penguin would never forget. That morning he had been full of ambition, his head packed with dreams of his boss eliminated and himself taking over. By noon he had been terrified. Was Agent Gordon brain dead? He came alone to arrest Fish? It was over. Fish was looking right at him. By evening he had been beaten and scolded. He'd wanted nothing more than to go home. Now it was the next day, and Oswald Cobblepot had long given up hope of surviving. Boom boom. Gunfire outside made him tremble. Just one agent. And Fish had a machine gun? He sat on the cold ground, back against a concrete block, the fear of death bowing his head. Then a voice called, "Cobblepot, right?" Oswald nodded without looking up. Fish said she'll torture you properly before she kills you. You know that, right? He buried his head lower. But someone pleaded to spare you. The voice continued. Oswald looked up and saw Gotham's overlord, Falcone, standing before him. Falcone, sir, he stammered. This was his chance. If there was ever a turning point, he told himself, he had to seize it. Falcone spoke softly. He said you have talent. He hopes you won't disappoint him. A face flickered in Oswald's memory, someone who had once said words like that. Before he could reply, a cloth sack was thrown over his head and his world went dark. Penguin struggled twice, then remembered Falcone's words and stopped. Whatever was happening, they weren't there to kill him. He let himself be shoved into a car trunk and kept silent as it rattled away. He had nowhere to go. If this turn of events offered a lifeline, he would accept whatever the rescuer demanded. After a long, bumpy ride in the dark, the car stopped when a ship's horn sounded. He had no trouble guessing where he was. At the dock, he felt hands lift him out and a voice whisper in his ear. The bag's open. Mr. Lee is waiting for you on the other side. It was Lee who had saved him. How a boxer, also hunted, had persuaded Falcone to spare him was a mystery. Li Ming became unfathomable to Oswald in an instant. Then the men dumped him and the sack into the water. He flailed, ripped at the bag, and dove for the far bank. He knew this was only temporary safety. Li Ming had saved him because he intended to use him. Falcone's words echoed, "Don't disappoint them." Offending Falcone would be worse than offending Fish. The distance from dock to shore was long, and Oswald's body was weak. He hadn't swum long before his arms burned and his limbs went cold, but his will was iron. No matter who Li Ming was, since he'd shown him mercy, this could be the chance Oswald had always wanted to change his life. He pushed on. On the bank, Lai watched him close. The plan to throw Oswald into the water had been his idea. In the original account, Penguin faked his death here, swam to shore, and escaped. Lai didn't have to follow the script exactly. He wanted Oswald desperate, to give him a sliver of hope, then break his body and spirit so that when Lai saved him, the favor would be complete and absolute. Nearby, an old fisherman watched the thrashing figure approach. Lai called to him twice, ordering him to move away. "Hey, find another place to fish," he said. "I just set my bait," the man muttered until Lee drew a dark pistol from his coat. He shut up at once and slipped away. Lee pocketed the gun Falcone had provided and nodded as if satisfied. "Who fishes without a helmet?" he said to himself. After what felt like an eternity, Oswald's strokes found land. He crawled up, exhausted. Then a familiar voice greeted him, warm and kind. "Hello, Oswald." Li Ming stood on the bank smiling, hand outstretched. Oswald grabbed it like a drowning man. With a jerk, Li hauled him ashore. "Mr. Li, Sir Li Ming." Oswald's teeth chattered and his words came out as a jumble. He limped. One leg had been broken by Fish, and he could only walk like that now, answering the nickname Penguin better than ever. Lee raised a hand and shushed him, then handed him hot tea and some pastries laid out on the bank. "Warm up first," he said. "Thank you, sir," Oswald whispered and devoured the food. He hadn't eaten since noon yesterday, and the long swim had left him famished and numb. When Oswald had warmed and eaten, Lee produced clean clothes and helped him change. The thoughtful care moved him deeply. "Mr. Lee, thank you so much," he said the moment he could manage speech. Lee's face softened. "I told you before, I admire you, Oswald." Oswald felt a flush of shame and pride. He had betrayed his former master by setting him up to be arrested. It had been a gamble that hadn't fully paid off, but the intent had been clear. "Ambition is a kind of talent," Lee went on. "Without it, we don't get anywhere." "You were just too hasty this time," he added, surprising Oswald by not scolding him for the betrayal, but for the poor execution. "I had a feeling something would happen when Agent Gordon went to see Fish," Lai continued. "So I asked Falcone to spare you. If you'd just been let go, it would have been awkward with Fish. Falcone's official story will be that Agent Gordon killed you to save his own life." Lee explained briefly why he had intervened. "You can guess why I did it," he said. Oswald swallowed and answered with conviction. "Yes, sir. Whatever you ask, I'll do it." "I'm not like Fish," Lee replied. "I have room enough for your ambitions, but it depends on whether you're capable." Oswald straightened himself as best he could. "What do you want me to do, Sir Li Ming?" he asked, voice steady now. Lee studied him a moment, then said, I want you to change your name and go undercover for Moroni. Chapter 9. Visiting Wayne Manor. Wayne Manor sat in the northern suburbs of Gotham, an enormous estate in a style only Gotham could produce. Despite its size and grandeur, only two people lived there, Bruce Wayne and Alfred Pennyworth. In a city riddled with crime, where robberies were daily headlines, the sight of a massive mansion guarded only by an old man and a young heir, without visible security systems, somehow going untouched was just another Gotham oddity. Li Ming arrived at the manor's entrance, called out for Bruce, and moments later watched the boy run eagerly to meet him. After the funeral for Thomas and Martha Wayne and the transfer of Wayne Enterprises to Bruce, the public scrutiny of the young heir had quickly faded. After Li Ming's unexpected work with Penguin and a stint training him, the chance to meet Gotham's future protagonist at last presented itself. He had saved Bruce. He wanted a good relationship with the young man who would one day wear a cowl. Saving Bruce felt like a small personal victory. With a gang overlord as an ally and the future king of Gotham, Penguin, indebted to him, Li Ming felt he could walk through Gotham sideways. King of Gotham? I am, he thought with a small private grin. Li, you're finally here, Bruce said, out of breath and grinning as he opened the door for him. Even Alfred trailed a step behind. I've been a little busy lately, Li Ming said. Have your troubles been resolved? If not, I can help. Bruce shot a quick, worried look toward Li. They're handled. Li Ming was safe as long as he remained on Falcone territory. Falcone hadn't informed Moroni, and that alone provided a buffer. Alfred, this is Li, the man I told you about who saved me, Bruce introduced. Alfred, used to a reserved young master, had been puzzled by Bruce's excitement. When he heard the story, he stepped forward, took Li Ming's hand, and said with measured gratitude, So you're Mr. Li. I am Alfred Pennyworth, the guardian of the young master. On behalf of the Wayne family, I sincerely thank you. Alfred had become Bruce's legal guardian after the Waynes' deaths, a role the family had planned for him. He cared little for Li Ming's origins. Saving Bruce was more than enough to make him welcome. Li Ming refused to take credit, which only increased Alfred's respect. They moved through the manor to the study. After asking Li Ming's preference, Alfred bustled off to fetch tea. The black tea was clearly high quality, if not brewed with flawless technique, but Li Ming appreciated the effort. Alfred ran everything in the house himself, from cooking and laundry to the books and accounts. Only the gardens were tended by outside workers. Wayne Manor didn't have to worry much about expenses, anyway. I mainly came to see whether Bruce is all right, Li Ming said. I'm fine. Not so fine. Bruce and Alfred answered at the same time, then exchanged looks. I'm fine, Bruce insisted, annoyed. If by fine you mean standing on rooftops' edges or walking blindfolded into dense woods, Alfred began calmly. If those dangerous stunts don't count, then yes, he's fine, Li added, cutting in. Bruce faltered slightly at Li Ming's tone and hurried to explain, I do it to conquer fear. Li Ming had said something that night which had struck a chord with Bruce, and the fact that Li Ming's own past paralleled Bruce's made the boy instinctively place him among people who mattered. Do you still have nightmares? Li Ming asked. Sometimes, Bruce admitted. In fact, the young master often suffers from insomnia, and even when he sleeps, he has nightmares, Alfred pointed out without mercy. Li Ming had seen the root of Bruce's fear, the alley that night, and it was familiar territory. Fear isn't a weakness, Li Ming said earnestly. Being controlled by fear is. He thought carefully before continuing. Bruce, you're headstrong, and I won't try to take away what you choose to do, but the prerequisite for conquering fear isn't putting yourself in danger. Alfred nodded vigorously. Safety, above all, was his concern. The rest could be tolerated, even mysteries the Waynes had left unsolved. That had been Thomas Wayne's intent. Bruce should be allowed to choose his own path. As long as you're safe, I believe Pennyworth will support your choices, Li Ming added. Mr. Li, you can call me Alfred, Alfred said, pleased and a little flustered by their approval. It's avoidance, Bruce said stubbornly. No, Li Ming replied softly. Redirecting your focus can help you face nightmares more calmly. Try structured challenges instead of risking yourself. He looked Bruce straight in the eye. I went back to that night. My parents died in my head 1,000 times, but eventually I found the courage to step out of it. I can walk past that night without being dragged back in. I want the same for you." Li Ming wasn't a caregiver by training, but sometimes the speaker mattered more than the speech. Bruce, hearing from someone who had suffered and found a way through, listened. "All right, I'll try," Bruce said finally. "What should I start with?" Alfred rubbed his hands together, delighted at any activity that might channel Bruce's energy. "Horseback riding? Hunting? Gardening?" Bruce considered, but looked uninterested in each suggestion. He turned to Li Ming. "What challenge did you pick?" Li made a small boxing motion with his fist. "Boxing." "Oh, right, you're a boxer," Bruce said, remembering. "Then I'll do boxing." He made up his mind. Alfred hesitated for a beat, surprised, unsure, but then smiled as he realized Bruce had found some spark of determination. "Very well," Alfred said. "If it helps him, I'm all for it." "Teach me boxing," Bruce told Li Ming. Li Ming's expression softened into a small, approving smile. He nodded. The idea of training the young heir felt right, a practical way to test himself without reckless danger, and a way to give Bruce a tool to face what haunted him. Chapter 10. Movements from all sides. Li Ming glanced at Alfred and almost said, "This man is far stronger than I am." Alfred wasn't an ordinary butler. He'd been an MI5 agent in his youth and had fought alongside Thomas Wayne. Now older and settled into the butler's life, he still wasn't someone Li Ming, with his boxing 11.5, could take on. To Li Ming's surprise, Alfred only gave a slightly rueful nod. If that was how it was, Li Ming wouldn't refuse. Teaching the future Batman while training Penguin was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. So Li Ming moved into Wayne Manor, for a time at least, to teach Bruce boxing. Teaching turned out to be more sparring and mutual learning. Alfred remained the real instructor. Li Ming's boxing came from his old body, rough and unconventional, learned in underground rings rather than in any school of tradition. More important than technique, though, was companionship. Only Bruce and Alfred lived in the great, echoing manor, and it felt enormous and lonely. Bruce still carried the trauma of his parents' murder, and Alfred, never having raised a child, struggled with the boy's odd behavior. Li Ming brought life into the house. He talked easily, kept Bruce company, and his presence made the boy smile more. Alfred grew fond of him. For a time, Wayne Manor could almost have been the set for a show called The Happy Life of Three Men. 2 days later, another guest arrived, Detective Jim Gordon. He'd come to explain that Mario Pepper, the man previously blamed for the Wayne's murder, had been framed and that the wrong person had been killed. Gordon asked for Bruce's understanding and left his badge with him, promising to do what he could to clean up the police department and then let Bruce decide whether to let him continue investigating the Wayne's deaths. Alfred scoffed at the explanation. He'd never had much faith in Gordon's ability to see the big picture, and now thought him a novice. Bruce, only 12 and instinctively drawn to people with a sense of justice, chose to trust Gordon despite his disappointment that the real killer was still out there. Li Ming had expected Bruce to take the news hard and was there to comfort him, keeping him from sliding into deeper gloom. After that, Bruce began following the city's news and case files obsessively, the Wayne's deaths, the economic fallout, how Gotham ran. It was strange to hear such a curiosity come from a child, but Bruce wanted to understand everything. Li Ming benefited too. Alfred taught Bruce the basics, but with Li Ming he went further. Not just boxing, but comprehensive combat techniques, everything Alfred knew. Li Ming absorbed the lessons astonishingly fast. On his personal panel, his boxing Level 5 shifted into combat Level 3. Combat covered a lot more ground than pure boxing, so although his boxing rank had dropped, his overall fighting ability had broadened. Li Ming grinned to himself. So I really am a martial arts prodigy then. He wasn't the only quick learner. When Bruce saw Alfred giving Li Ming special instruction, the boy insisted on joining and showed results in days. The making of Batman was underway. While Li Ming's skills grew at Wayne Manor, Gotham's turmoil spread. Gordon, back at the station, kept up his work. Breaking a major human trafficking ring of homeless children had begun to burnish his reputation. But trouble found him. Detectives Montoya and her partner at Major Crimes noticed Penguin's disappearance and connected it to Penguin's role as an informant, exposing collusion between the gangs and the police. They quickly suspected Gordon of silencing Penguin. It was understandable. Aside from Li Ming, only Falcone, Penguin, and Gordon knew the truth. Most others, including Gordon's colleague Brock, believed Gordon could be guilty. Montoya came to Gordon's door demanding answers. Falcone had privately told Gordon that Penguin was dead, while publicly laying the blame on him, a twisted kind of protection that also served to humiliate. With Falcone's implied threat on one side and major crimes investigation on the other, Gordon had little room to maneuver. He used the Balloon Man case as a cover, since Montoya had no solid evidence. Worse, a troublesome child complicated matters. Catwoman, Catherine, lied about seeing a suspect in the Wayne murders to avoid juvenile detention. Gordon vouched for her, but during interrogation, she slipped away. The way she spoke made Gordon uneasy. She might actually know more than she let on. Falcone, too, had setbacks. After learning from Li Ming that Fish and Nikolai had betrayed him, he remained outwardly calm but sent warnings. He beat Fish's male servant lover as a message, and when Fish's female associate fled with someone else days later, Falcone personally visited Fish's territory to warn them not to cross him. Meanwhile, Penguin thrived. After a period of laying low and following Li Ming's counsel, he changed his name and went back into Gotham under a new identity to apply for a lowly job. He showed up at Barmont, an Italian restaurant that was actually a Maroni family meeting place and an important transit point for their finances, to ask about becoming a dishwasher. The manager turned him away. They were fully staffed. When Penguin pressed, the manager snapped that anyone who worked in a restaurant had to be on their feet all day, and your shoes aren't even right. Penguin looked down at his own worn shoes, then at the dishwasher's proper leather footwear, and nodded. That evening, he stopped the dishwasher who was leaving after his shift. "You work at the Italian place up ahead?" he asked. "Yes," the man answered warily. "What shoe size do you wear?" Penguin asked. The question was odd. 42. Penguin couldn't help smiling. "Funny, you and I wear the same size." The next day, Penguin started work as a dishwasher at Barmont. Chapter 11, Taming Gotham. The Balloon Man case had escalated. A man who bound Gotham's most notorious corrupt figures to hot air balloons and sent them skyward, sometimes alive, sometimes not, had the city on edge. That morning, as Li Ming and the others finished breakfast, the television was broadcasting another live stunt. The Balloon Man had sent a priest aloft. "This is bad," Li Ming said. At least he didn't do it quietly, he thought. How can someone kill like that in broad daylight? "Why kill in daylight?" Bruce asked. If his targets are usually people with bad reputations, maybe it's someone small who finally snapped and decided to punish evil in his own way. Li Ming lifted his teacup and sipped Alfred's black tea. It still wasn't to his taste, but Alfred loved brewing it, and one didn't insult the house chef. Alfred ran everything in the manor, food, lodging, so neither Bruce nor Li Ming complained. "Like a vigilante?" Bruce asked. "Yes." Li Ming nodded. Bruce frowned. "If someone's a vigilante, they shouldn't kill. Killing only breeds more crime." "That's true," Li Ming agreed. "Many people don't understand where to draw the line. But often," Bruce said, "people who call themselves vigilantes aren't really trying to be. They're just ordinary folks fighting back." Li Ming's mind supplied what his past life memories had taught him. The Balloon Man had been a kindly old man who ran an orphanage. Angry that the mayor was sending Gotham's homeless children to prison, he'd finally taken matters into his own hands. "That isn't vigilantism," Li Ming said. "That's criminal. No matter the motive, killing is against the law." Bruce's no-kill principle was firm. Li Ming had no intention of trying to change it. He hadn't forgotten who he was here for. He was part of the gang, and whatever he accomplished here would shape his future in this city. Bruce's eventual becoming Batman felt inevitable. If the day ever came that Batman opposed him, Li Ming wanted to be confident his life wouldn't be in mortal danger. Still, given their current relationship, a future rivalry seemed unlikely. "Who'll be the Balloon Man's next target?" Bruce asked, curious. "Who knows?" Li Ming shrugged. "He's following a pattern, a public figure who's respected on the surface but rotten underneath." "He says a lot without narrowing anything down," Alfred quipped. "This is Gotham," Li Ming said, with a wry smile. "That narrows it quite a bit." "All right, young master, time for school," Alfred reminded Bruce, who, like most students, was reluctant to go. Bruce would have preferred fencing or boxing at the manor, but Alfred was his guardian. Bruce changed and prepared to leave. Since that's the case, I should be going too, Li Ming said, stretching. Li, you're leaving? Bruce hurried over. Alfred added calmly, Wayne Manor welcomes you. Stay as long as you like. I'm still staying, Li Ming said. I just have my own things to take care of. You're going to reorganize the gang? Bruce asked. Li Ming had already explained his plans. Gotham was spiraling, and if someone could unite the gang now, they could shape the city's future. Bruce admired Li Ming's ambition, so long as no killing was involved. Yes, the gang members are stirring already. Alfred, perceptive as ever, knew Li Ming's plans ran deeper, but he'd seen no malice toward Bruce. As long as Bruce was safe, Alfred had no objections. If Li Ming could bring order to Gotham's underworld, that might even help the city. Given Li Ming's character and what he'd observed of him, his insight into Gotham's factions, both Bruce and Alfred trusted him. Be careful, Alfred warned. Let me know if you need anything. No problem. A moment later, Alfred remembered another task. I'll keep an eye on the thing you asked about. Li Ming had asked Alfred to search Wayne Enterprises for any research into cancer. His mother's illness weighed heavily on him. From the fragments of the Gotham story he recalled, the only thing that truly healed everything, wounds, even death, was the Lazarus Pit, the supernatural pool Ra's al Ghul used to renew himself. But the pit was Ra's, and Li Ming had only 6 months in this version of Gotham. Seizing it was impossible. In the plot he knew, Bruce didn't encounter the Lazarus Pit for years. There was another possibility, Dr. Hugo Strange at Arkham. Strange, who later raised villains and experimented at Indian Hill, might have the knowledge to cure something like cancer. But Hugo Strange answered to connections Li Ming didn't want to cross, the Court of Owls. Approaching Strange recklessly would attract dangerous attention. That's why Li Ming had asked Alfred to dig through the Wayne Group's research, and failing that, to gather everything he could on Arkham and Indian Hill. The next big conflicts in Gotham would all orbit Arkham. Arkham Asylum itself had become contested ground. Once celebrated, the asylum was now derelict, and the government was replanning its use. Falcone had been its de facto patron and intended to implement the rebuild plan the Waynes had once proposed. Maroni, however, had other ideas. He wanted to abolish the asylum and seize the land. Their fight wasn't about real estate as much as prestige and control. If Falcone won, he maintained his claim as Gotham's top crime boss. If Maroni prevailed, Falcone would be exposed as weakened and his men restless. Li Ming didn't plan to play Falcone's babysitter. He'd allied with Falcone when convenient, but his aim wasn't to prop him up. It was to take what influence Falcone had for himself. A respected boss needs to feel the sting of vulnerability before he retires, Li Ming thought. He had already decided his third target in Gotham, Falcone. The chapter ended with a small aside from the author. The writer's assistant hadn't notified them, and they only noticed after checking the daily report. Please don't hoard chapters, everyone. Chapter 12. Penguin. His methods are quite similar to mine. The war between Falcone and Maroni broke out fast, and the first casualties were the city councilors. Maroni struck first, taking out councilors who backed Falcone. Falcone answered immediately the next day, and Maroni's men paid in turn. Councilors who had swaggered through other cities now looked like chickens waiting for the slaughter in Gotham. Naturally, these high-profile, messy murders landed on the Gordon partners' desks. As the investigation peeled back layer after layer, the Gordons found something both absurd and maddening. The assassin contracted to kill councilors on both sides was the same person. One killer served both Falcone and Maroni. Only in Gotham could such a thing happen. Li Ming had not told Falcone about Maroni's meddling in Arkham. He met with Falcone and arranged for Falcone to confront Maroni openly. At the same time, Li Ming planned a covert move. He would send Penguin deep into the Maroni family as an undercover asset. One front loud and public, the other quiet and hidden, a neat division of labor with no overlap. Penguin executed his part perfectly. Oswald had taken a job as a dishwasher at Bar Mont, and he quickly caught Sal Maroni's eye. His sharp observation skills and the fact that his mother was Italian made him seem like someone who belonged. But impressions weren't enough. Li Ming needed him to burrow into the family. One evening, as the Maroni crew settled their accounts at the restaurant, Penguin was washing dishes when a commotion erupted outside. Bang, bang, bang. 3 masked men stormed the place, firing wildly at staff. They ignored the diners entirely and went straight for the kitchen where Maroney kept the cash. By the time the Maroney men arrived, the robbers were gone. Frankie, Maroney's second, inspected everything with methodical coldness. The staff were dead. He found a trail of bloody footprints leading to the walk-in freezer. Frankie yanked the door open to find Penguin crouched inside, wearing a kitchen uniform, clutching a bag of cash, shaking. "Thank God you're here," Penguin stammered. "They had guns." "They all had masks?" Frankie cut in. "I couldn't see their faces," Oswald replied. He was terrified, voice breaking. "But I hid this bag." Frankie's voice softened. "You saved something at least." "Yes. The rest was taken. I'm sorry." Penguin looked stricken. "Don't worry." Frankie's tone shifted. A small favor had been done. "Tell the boss." Ming had been waiting in a cafe across the street from Barmont. He couldn't move openly in Maroney territory, so he watched from a distance, pleased to find the coffee there better than the tea at Wayne Manor. He'd received a tip. The Italian restaurant had been robbed, and the dishwasher had saved a bag of money. Sal Maroney was bound to reward him. Inside the restaurant, Maroney raged. Whoever knew they kept cash there and had the nerve to take it had to be working for Falcone, he decided. "Falcone thinks he can make trouble on my turf and walk away?" Maroney barked. "No, today we hit back, hard." "I'll take care of it," Frankie said, and then he glanced at the dishwasher. "And that kid? Bring him here." Penguin set down his plates, straightened his apron, and approached Maroney. "You know I'm never stingy when it's time to show appreciation," Maroney told him, eyes sharp. "Yes, Mr. Maroney," Oswald said. "What you did yesterday, I haven't forgotten." Maroney tested him. "How long you been washing dishes?" "Not long." Maroney waved him off. "You don't need to wash anymore. You're promoted, manager." He nodded toward a table still stained with the old manager's blood. "That job's open." Oswald nearly bowed with gratitude. Maroney told Frankie to give him some money for a decent suit, then left to set his plan against Falcone in motion. Ming waited until Penguin finished his first day in a new suit before meeting him outside. Penguin, newly transformed in a tailored jacket and chin held high, hurried over and dropped to a respectful distance. "Thank you, Mr. Ming. I'm just your instrument. It's you who matters. Everything's moving as you planned." "Did you handle the robbers?" Ming asked. "Yes, sir. They really liked the cakes I brought." Ming smiled without surprise. The robbery hadn't been Falcone's doing. Falcone wanted the war to be controlled. Assassinating counselors back and forth was a proxy affair, not direct theft that would spill blood between their families. The staged robbery did one thing. It escalated fear and forced Maroney's hand without open warfare, exactly what Ming intended. In truth, these were moves Penguin would have made himself to climb. Ming had simply offered Oswald the plan in advance, wrapped for him to use. And Oswald loved it. Ming respected him, recognized his capacity, and most important of all, his methods matched Ming's own. Having been raised in Gotham, Ming was the first person Oswald genuinely wanted to follow. "I meant to hand the money over," Penguin began. "Keep it," Ming interrupted. "It costs to build good relations. Consider it an investment." Ming half joked that he was practically an honorary Wayne. If money ever ran short, a call to Bruce would fix it. Then he narrowed his eyes. "Did you get what I asked for?" Penguin pulled a slip of paper from his pocket and presented it with trembling hands. "Yes, sir. Detective Gordon's contact information." Chapter 13. Gordon's heart sank. When Ming returned to Wayne Manor that evening, Bruce had already come home from school and was watching the news. Influenced by Ming, he had lately taken a keen interest in Gotham affairs, more than in boxing and fencing. At 12, his enthusiasm still burned bright and short, and right now his attention was fixed on the Arkham redevelopment plan that had been causing a stir. "How did it turn out? Who got Arkham?" Ming asked, but he directed the question to the man standing nearby. Detective James Gordon, because the Wayne couple had asked Gordon to inform Bruce as soon as there was a decision. Maroney was approved to build a waste treatment plant and to renovate Arkham Asylum, Gordon said without surprise at Ming's appearance. Falcone was approved to build low-cost housing. The Wayne's plan wasn't adopted, Gordon added with a sigh. He shared Bruce's disappointment. All the couple's hard work had been handed over to criminals, and the boy was visibly crushed. "You're still alive." Ming stepped forward and patted Bruce's shoulder. "That's your parents' greatest hope. And as long as you're alive, there's always a chance for later," he added. Given Ming's place in Bruce's mind, a single word from him meant more than many from others. Soon, Bruce's spirits were lifted again. "You have a way with kids," Gordon said from the doorway, the memory of being outwitted by the mischievous catgirl Catherine making him smile. He then turned to Ming with gratitude. "And thank you for the tip. You helped me get to Mayor James in time." "You're welcome," Ming replied. Though he deserved to die, the mayor's death would have had too great an impact. He had arranged for Penguin to get Gordon's number and used that contact to warn him that Maroney's assassin was heading to the mayor. In the original course of events, Penguin would have tipped Gordon off, but since Penguin and Gordon weren't connected now, Ming had handled it himself. Gordon could only nod. Despite being a cop, he agreed with Ming's low opinion of the mayor. When the assassin was at the door, the mayor had been stuffing cash into a bag, choosing money over his life. "Bruce told me someone saved him a while ago, but I've never met whoever it was," Gordon said, changing the subject. "Do you have any leads on the robber?" "No, only his back," Ming shrugged. "Whoever shot at the Waynes is probably 6 feet under by now." "Was the assassin who tried to kill the mayor caught?" Bruce asked. "No," Gordon answered. "He didn't give us a chance." "So Maroney," Ming trailed off. "There's no evidence linking the assassin to Maroney," Gordon said helplessly. "Everyone suspected Maroney, but without proof they couldn't touch him. I heard Maroney's been after you." Gordon's curiosity sharpened. "In Gotham, being hunted by the gangs is unfortunately normal," Ming said, keeping his cards close. As they walked him to the door, Gordon tried to make conversation. "What are you planning to do?" "The gangs?" Ming's expression grew strange. Gordon stopped in his tracks, surprised. "Are you that bold?" he thought. "With Bruce's help, you can do a lot. Why get involved with the gangs? I don't want to have to arrest you." "I won't turn into Maroney," Ming smiled. "And Gotham's real enemy has never been the gangs or ordinary criminals. It's chaos." Gordon's face hardened. "Are you connected to Falcone? Is he your man?" "I'm not his," Ming said, easing Gordon's suspicion. "There is some connection, but I don't want to foster crime. My goal is to stabilize Gotham." Gordon, who didn't know Ming well, let the words sit and then offered a piece of advice. "That child, Bruce, he admires you. Don't disappoint him." Ming nodded. He felt genuine warmth from both Bruce and Alfred and had no intention of letting them down. As for the rest of the city, he was more pragmatic. "The Arkham decision alone is going to set Gotham off," he said, undoing Gordon's cautious optimism. Gordon frowned. "But Falcone always kept things running, even with all the crime." "Arkham has always been Falcone's territory," Ming explained. "If Maroney gets even a single brick of Arkham, it shakes Falcone's hold. Now Maroney has almost half the land. Whether Maroney moves to expand or Falcone tries to crush him, everyone will scramble to take the reins." "This turmoil is just thunder before the storm," Ming added. Gordon listened, suddenly very serious. He'd never thought of the redevelopment in quite that way. Impulse gave way to calculation as he stared into Ming's eyes. "You want to replace Falcone?" Ming nodded without evasion. "Falcone is weakening. Gotham's underworld needs someone with vision." "No matter what, don't put me in a position where I have to arrest you," Gordon warned. He had seen too much of Gotham's damage to dismiss Ming's logic. "There's one more thing you must remember," Gordon said as they stepped outside. "What is it?" Ming asked. "Do you remember Oswald Cobblepot?" Gordon's voice went tight. Ming's expression was steady. "He's not dead," he said. Gordon's heart sank. "What?" "Falcone publicly claimed you killed Oswald," Ming continued. "Now that Oswald has reappeared in Gotham, Falcone is going to make an example of anyone who opposes him. He won't forgive you for being his scapegoat." The words hit Gordon hard. He'd wanted only to be a good cop. Now the cruel machinery of Gotham's criminal politics was closing in on him. Gordon felt the world darken for a moment. He couldn't afford Falcone hunting him. For an instant, he even thought about calling Barbara and telling her to pack up and run. Then Ming smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's all a pretense, just to draw them out." Gordon let out a shaky breath and, half in relief, jabbed Li Ming lightly. Damn it, why didn't you just say that? Li Ming shrugged. It's part of the plan. You don't need to know everything. But this helps you too, clears you of murder suspicion, Gordon said. It was more than that. The real biggest benefit was saving Barbara. In the original sequence, under Brock's supervision, Gordon pretended to kill Penguin, but other witnesses were present. Montoya and Allen from Major Crimes concluded Gordon was a corrupt cop and kept digging until they found an eyewitness. Just as they were about to arrest him, Penguin reappeared and pulled Gordon out of custody. Falcone, furious at being deceived, sent his bald, deadly enforcer Sass to hunt Gordon. Barbara, terrified when Sass threatened her on the way out of Gotham, distanced herself from Gordon and leaned on Montoya. By the time she calmed down and tried to return, she found Gordon with Dr. Tompkins. Heartbroken, she spiraled, and a serial killer known as the Ogre exploited her vulnerability. She killed her parents and became another major villain in Gotham. Gordon, pushed to the brink, even kidnapped the mayor to use as leverage against Falcone. If Barbara hadn't been taken, Gordon might have ended up arresting the top figures in both the city's underworld and its legal system. Thanks to Li Ming's maneuvering, none of that had to happen. Barbara wouldn't leave him now. Before Falcone comes after you, Maroni will want to see you, Li Ming added. He'll ask about your connection to Penguin. Tell him the shots you fired at Penguin were blanks. Penguin had wormed his way into the Maroni family, and to become a trusted asset, he would need allies to corroborate his story. Maroni would inevitably ask Gordon about the incident, so Li Ming coached Gordon on his alibi and on what to do if he was hounded. Satisfied, he let the still dazed Gordon go. Back at the house, Li Ming found Alfred waiting with a tray. Try the waffles I just learned to make, Alfred said with cautious pride. Li Ming forced a smile and took one. Alfred's cooking had long been a running joke among the future Robins. If Alfred's established reputation was anything to go by, the new waffles would be an acquired taste at best. He ought to have spent more time with Gordon, Li Ming thought. How's the gang angle going? Alfred asked. On track, Li Ming said as he set the plate down. Alfred hesitated. But you weren't interested in gang politics before. I wasn't. Until young Master looked into Wayne Enterprises' holdings and found investments tied to a lot of the city's gangs, Li Ming said. It looks like elements of Wayne Group's senior management have ties to the underworld. Young Master suspects someone high up is compromised, Alfred finished. Li Ming knew the truth. The current Wayne Group was riddled with connections, to the Court of Owls, to gangs, to opportunists, so much so that when Bruce grew up, he had to spend years cleaning it out. After a moment, he offered, maybe we should change the approach. Change to what? Ask how many people in Wayne Group's upper ranks are not involved in crime. Alfred couldn't help a small laugh. That's an effective question. Li Ming's expression went serious. There's a Wayne Group banquet in a few days. Lots of senior executives will be there. Get me an entry pass. And when Bruce goes, don't let him out of your sight for a single step. Alfred immediately tensed. Is something going to happen? Another balloon man? Is Bruce the target? It's not specifically about Bruce, but better safe than sorry, Li Ming said. Bruce wants to attend. I will be there too. He won't be in danger with both of us watching. Alfred trusted Li Ming's devotion to Bruce and, reassured, did not press him further. Meanwhile, Maroni had his own problems. His restaurant had been robbed, and if he didn't respond, it would seem like he feared Falcone. He planned to hit Falcone's casino, but his lieutenant Frankie was clearly cowed, and the casino was heavily guarded. As a frontal assault seemed impossible, Penguin offered a way in. He claimed to have contacts inside the casino and said he could arrange a sneak-in. Curious, Maroni called Penguin in to talk. He had barely paid attention to the little man after appointing him restaurant manager, but Penguin sat down eagerly and began to spin his tale. He opened with a long, mysterious prelude and then confessed he had once worked for Fish Mooney, exactly the kind of revelation Maroni ought to find valuable. Maroni's eyes widened in surprise. Then, as if pleased with the turn of events, he grinned and shoved Penguin up onto the table. Chapter 15. Li Ming's Plan. Penguin still thought too simply. He believed that revealing his old role as Fish Mooney's subordinate would make Maroni value him. After all, he knew secrets. He hadn't expected Maroney's first reaction to be suspicion, or that Maroney would bring Gordon forward and insist on a face-to-face. Surrounded by fear, Penguin felt a deep, almost worshipful gratitude toward Li Ming. Li Ming had prepared him, rehearsed what they would say. Penguin had been sure Maroney would accept him as soon as he confessed. He'd even thought Li Ming was being overly cautious. Without that caution, he would have been dead. Maroney's plan unfolded smoothly because Li Ming had planned it to. He'd put Penguin in danger on purpose so that, when Penguin escaped by Li Ming's design, his loyalty would deepen. Li Ming intended to manipulate him, even brainwash him if necessary. That way, when Li Ming eventually left this world, Penguin would have no wish to betray him. Whenever he had time, Li Ming replayed episodes of Gotham in his memory library, pulling out and preparing scenes to train Penguin. Penguin wasn't the only pawn in Li Ming's scheme. 3 figures mattered most: Penguin, Falcone, and Fish Mooney. Bruce wasn't a tool in Li Ming's calculations. In this version of Gotham, Bruce wasn't the central piece. Li Ming's plan had 3 parts mapped to those 3 players. The first was to use Penguin to infiltrate the Maroney family and stoke the feud between Maroney and Falcone. By provoking a bloody clash between Gotham's 2 top crime families and destabilizing the city, Li Ming would be able to fish in troubled waters. That was the step currently underway. The second part was to complete Penguin's social transformation, to remove the obstacles that would otherwise keep him from taking over. Penguin started as an obscure nobody. Even if Falcone and Maroney fell, Penguin wouldn't qualify to claim their territories. Someone else would benefit. So Li Ming planned for Penguin to rise under Maroney's banner first. Posing as a loyal aide who helped Falcone eliminate traitors, Penguin would gain Maroney's confidence and, through Maroney's help, quietly remove key figures in the Falcone family. Penguin's status would shift from peripheral to core member of Maroney's organization. Then, at the right moment, Li Ming would have Penguin defect to Falcone's camp and replace Fish Mooney. A core member of the Maroney family turning coat would immediately get a leadership role within Falcone's ranks. Territory, men, power. That's when Penguin would truly transform from minion to crime boss, and Li Ming's primary mission would be complete. But Li Ming wanted more than mere completion. He knew the mission's evaluation depended on the scale of influence. Replacing Fish Mooney would probably earn a C-grade result, but a higher score was possible. Fish mattered because she was one of Falcone's most capable lieutenants. Falcone tolerated her only because she was useful, until she crossed his ultimate taboo. Li Ming's third stage was to manipulate Fish into taking out Maroney, to force her to bear Maroney's retaliation, and ultimately push Falcone into abdicating. If Penguin ended up inheriting Falcone's territories, he could quickly unify Gotham's gangs, and Li Ming, working from behind the scenes, would secure the highest possible mission rating. There was one complication. Li Ming had to accelerate the story to finish the mission within 6 months. His advantage was knowing the original plot, so he made Penguin perform the successful moves the series credited to him. When Penguin failed, Li Ming treated those failures as opportunities to manipulate him, never reminding him of the truth, saving him only when real danger arrived. Credit was Li Ming's. Blame Penguin's. Think about it. You have a boss who constantly praises your ability, who grants you authority, and crafts meticulous plans that mostly succeed. Whenever you take independent action, it fails. You end up in desperate straits, and your boss always swoops in to save you. How grateful would you be? How willingly would you stay? That was Penguin's state. Li Ming also knew that no matter how much he favored Penguin, absolute power would make a local like him restless. So he prepared little staged scenarios to discipline and control him. The result was simple. Penguin would control Gotham's gangs, and Li Ming would control Penguin. That arrangement let Li Ming finish the mission while leaving him plenty of free time to improve himself. Gotham hadn't yet reached the point of widespread supernatural threats. His knowledge of the plot kept him safe. Still, Li Ming planned to be ready for other worlds, so self-improvement was always the right choice. Fortunately, Alfred had proved an excellent teacher, patient and willing to teach Li Ming how to fight. Li Ming's progress felt almost supernatural. After getting a certain amount of instruction, he would suddenly get it all in a flash. When Penguin led the raid on Falcone's casino, Li Ming's combat skill jumped to level 4. He didn't get to learn everything. Alfred was not ready to introduce Bruce's friend to guns, but Li Ming practiced shooting outside the manor, enough that he wouldn't freeze when forced to use a firearm. As for accuracy, it would be up to fate, but he expected it to be far better than the rough mercenaries he'd seen elsewhere. 2 days later, Bruce and Alfred were in formal attire for an important banquet. Li Ming, for some reason, still hadn't changed. "Li, why aren't you dressed yet?" Bruce asked, curious. He'd heard Li Ming was looking forward to the outing, but as departure approached, Li Ming remained in his usual clothes. "Have you forgotten who I'm supposed to be?" Li Ming said, and ruffled Bruce's hair. Bruce laughed. "Even though Maroni is distracted by Falcone right now, it's better if I lay low." "I'll stay outside the venue and keep you safe," Alfred said. "When will you stop being hunted?" Bruce asked. "Soon. In a few days," Li Ming answered. "When?" Bruce pressed. He'd been itching to see the city with Li Ming. Li Ming hesitated. After Gordon is safe." "Huh?" "The cat didn't wake me up today." Chapter 16. The Viper Serum. Li Ming explained everything in detail. Only then did Bruce finally relax, reassured that Gordon wasn't truly in danger. "Once this is dealt with, I want to go out with you. Go fishing," Bruce said, a little excited. Li Ming seldom went out in public, and it was always inconvenient. "I can bring you waffles," Li Ming whispered in Bruce's ear. "The good kind." "That sounds amazing." The three of them arrived at the venue together, but Li Ming did not stay with Bruce. He slipped quietly into the back kitchen and waited near the service corridor that led to the elevator. After a while, a man in a hotel uniform came into view, pushing a small cart with a heavy metal canister on it. Li Ming moved to help, but the man waved him off. When the man tried to push on, the cart wouldn't budge. Li Ming's hold was firm. "Stan Potowski," Li Ming said, certain. The man froze. "You've got the wrong person," he said too quickly. He strained to move the cart, but he couldn't overcome Li Ming's grip. Li Ming's tone turned cold. One hand brushed the pistol in his holster. The sight of the gun made the man nod, as if admitting what he couldn't earlier. "Let's talk," Li Ming said, and guided Stan into a deserted service corner. Stan offered no resistance. He was introverted by nature. He had been a biochemist at Weizen Pharmaceuticals, working on a drug they called Viper, a respiratory-delivered biochemical weapon that produced a short, violent enhancement of physical attributes, strength enough to tear a person apart with their bare hands, but with fatal side effects. After the surge, the victim's bones would begin to disintegrate and the body would fail. Stan thought the serum was inhumane. He had tried to stop the research, reporting it up the chain until Mr. and Mrs. Wayne learned of it and shut the project down. After the Waynes died, Wayne Group restarted the program. Convinced that the company would exploit the research, Stan had leaked doses of Viper into Gotham's lower districts, hoping chaos would force public scrutiny. That had done nothing but make Gordon's workload worse. Now Stan had set his sights higher. He planned to release a large amount of Viper at tonight's charity gala, believing a mass attack on the city's elite would finally force attention onto the wrongdoing of Weizan and Wayne Group. Li Ming listened, largely incredulous, but also intrigued by the serum. He wasn't planning to use it himself. Viper's lethality made it useless for that, but its properties could be valuable to manipulate others or for other plans later. "This will accomplish nothing but murder," he said, tapping the metal canister. "I have to do this," Stan insisted. "Only if prominent people die will anyone pay attention to Weizan and Wayne Group's crimes." Stan was agitated. "But you're a criminal. Who would believe you? And anyway, it's only middle managers inside tonight. None of the real board members are here. Even if everyone inside dies, the powerful have 100 ways to bury it," Li Ming said, cutting him off. He spoke plainly and bluntly. Years with Alfred had sharpened his tongue. "If this gets out, if Viper is known of, those same people will be rushing to acquire it. Wayne Group will get more funding to continue their research." Li Ming watched Stan flinch as each point sank in. Stan had been a lab worker. He hadn't seen the bigger picture. But obsession had driven him on. He paced, checking his watch, then tried one more argument. "If it happens tonight, it'll make a scene." "Yes," Li Ming agreed coolly. "It'll make a scene, and it will make the serum desirable. Do you see where that leads?" Stan's resolve wavered. Li Ming took the chance. What do you want to do? Stan asked finally. Come work with me. I can help you achieve what you can't do alone. Li Ming framed it casually. Humph, you're only after Viper too, Stan scoffed. You're no better than the rest. There is a difference, Li Ming said. My enemies are those same important figures. Stan shook his head. I won't join you. Li Ming sighed as if he expected it. Then, flat and decisive, he asked for the formula. Give me the manufacturing method for Viper. Impossible, Stan snapped. Li Ming didn't bother to argue. He drew his pistol and leveled it at Stan's forehead. I didn't hear you. Answer again. Faced with a barrel, Stan went quiet. You need a precise lab. You can't just make it anywhere. You can still tell me how, Li Ming said. Where are your files? Warehouse 39, Stan muttered after a long moment. Everything you might want was there. Li Ming's expression hardened. He'd already checked Warehouse 39. It had been cleared a long time ago. Stan hesitated, then added, Horner's apartment, 503A. There are materials there. That was Stan's fallback. Under pressure, it came out. He fumbled in his pocket and reluctantly produced a key, handing it to Li Ming. Can I go now? He asked. Of course, Li Ming said, holstering his weapon. He kept his word. Stan hurried to the rooftop with the canister. He quickly hooked a hose from the canister into the hotel's ventilation system, then played a pre-recorded video on the ballroom screens accusing Wayne Group of crimes and announcing his attack. Guests panicked, some fled. Stan reached to open the canister and release the gas. Huh? He froze. The canister wouldn't empty. He inspected the hose and found a wad of toilet paper jammed tight inside the tube, blocking the flow. Damn! As he tried to clear it, Commissioner Gordon appeared and moved in to stop him. In the commotion, a heavy sound echoed. Someone had fallen. Stan, panic-stricken and defeated, had leapt from the roof. Li Ming heard the thud and felt nothing. He had expected no different. He left the building with Bruce and Alfred at his side. The wad of tissue had been his doing. He could not risk Bruce being inside a room filled with Viper. A terrorist with a jumper was no concern to him once the immediate threat to his people was removed. In the end, Li Ming's objective had been met. He allowed himself a private, almost smug satisfaction as he walked away. His plan had protected Bruce and exposed what needed exposing, and he'd come away with the leads he wanted. My goal is simple, he thought with an odd, private amusement. Everyone, give me your attention, help me collect what's necessary, and don't let the story sit unread. May those who help me achieve this have their wishes fulfilled. Chapter 17. Tell Victor to tone it down. That person is very strange. On the drive home, Bruce made the observation, then cut to the point. But he said the Wayne Group is involved in criminal activity, and it's probably true. Young master, you are still too young. I advise you not to pay too much attention to these matters, Alfred said as he drove. It's not too late to sort out the group when you come of age. I agree with Alfred, Li Ming added. Poking at the dark veins running through the Wayne Group prematurely could put an immature Bruce in danger. But they're committing crimes. If they're not exposed, a lot of people will get hurt. Bruce didn't want to wait. And once they're exposed, Bruce pressed. Whenever Bruce hit a wall, Li Ming knew it was his cue. Let the law punish them, he said. Bruce, laws rely on people to enforce them, and wherever there are people, there will be collusion. It's too dark. Bruce had only seen a sliver, but it was enough for him to be disappointed in Gotham's decline. So, Mr. Lee, that's why you started with the gangs, like an undercover agent? Bruce stared at Li Ming, suddenly understanding. His eyes lit up. Yes, you have to treat the symptoms. Li Ming didn't deny it. He seized the moment and kept persuading Bruce. This city is full of holes, but there are people patching them up, people like me, like Agent Gordon. So Bruce, if you want to help, don't rush. First, make yourself strong. In my hometown, there's an old saying, know yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. You need to understand your enemy before you can beat him. For example, if you want to root out the rot inside the Wayne Group, you must first gather intelligence, learn how they operate, then deliver a decisive blow when you come of age and officially join the board. Like a knockout in a boxing ring? Bruce was sold. He balled his fists and made a punching motion at Li Ming. Yes, a KO. Li Ming played along, sparring with Bruce in the car as if they were opponents, and Bruce laughed heartily. Alfred, behind the wheel, couldn't help but smile. Since Li Ming had come to live with them, Bruce no longer locked himself away and was noticeably happier. Alfred still didn't want Bruce tangled in Wayne group affairs, but at least the boy had been persuaded to wait. Late that night, Li Ming slipped out alone. He circled several blocks, checking to make sure he wasn't being followed, then made his way to Hornus Apartments, the safe house Stan had mentioned. He avoided the registration-required front entrance. Even a fake name would leave a trace. Instead, he found an open window and climbed inside. 503A, this is it. After he unlocked the door with a key, Li Ming tiptoed into the apartment, a pistol in hand just in case. It was clearly Stan's safe house. No other people, only piles of documents and a small experimental workstation. Satisfied it was empty, he stowed the gun and began searching for anything on Venom. Most of the files were Stan's collection, accounts of Wyzen Pharmaceuticals' criminal drug abuses, victim statements and testimonies, but little hard evidence. For Li Ming, they were useless. He wasn't interested in justice for strangers. Gotham had only one person who could truly uphold that, and that person wasn't him. Found it. At last, he uncovered a document with the Venom serum's research methods laid out. He skimmed a few lines, nothing he could immediately understand, then continued combing the room, packing up every piece of information on Venom. He didn't know whether these documents could be brought out of town, but it wouldn't hurt to have them. If he couldn't take them himself, he could have Penguin find someone to produce the serum. Then, when the gang war came, he'd make sure Maroni had a rough time. Shortly after he left the apartment, his phone rang. "Lord Falcone, how have you been?" Li Ming greeted. "Not bad." Falcone's voice sounded lighter than usual. He'd recently found a new female companion who pleased him, and he was in a good mood. "Someone from Maroni's side sent me a message." "Let me guess." Li Ming had an idea. "They're letting you know that Oswald is still alive?" "Yes, it seems your undercover agent is doing very well with Maroni and has made others wary." Falcone was an old hand. He could read most of the subtext. "That's good. Saves me the trouble of sending people to spread the news." Li Ming wasn't surprised. He'd planned to reveal that Penguin was alive anyway. Having someone else do it worked in his favor. "I'll follow your plan. Send Sass to hunt Gordon and send Fish to negotiate with Maroni. Anything you want to add?" "Tell Victor to tone it down." Li Ming still gave Gordon some protection. Gordon had never gotten the better of Baldy. Falcone's voice softened at the request. "All right, but will Fish really bring the war you promised?" He still had hopes pinned on Fish Mooney. Among Falcone's underlings, she was the most useful, even if Falcone occasionally disciplined her through her subordinates. Of course, it also suits Fish's interests. Only by starting a war can she and Nikolai create the chaos they want. Li Ming sounded confident, but once Nikolai is dead, Fish will have to settle down. He read Falcone's reluctance and offered him an out. Yes, Nikolai must die. Nikolai's influence rivaled Fish's. Falcone had no intention of showing mercy. Li Ming smiled faintly. It just so happened Nikolai had a grudge against the body's original owner too. Convenient timing to settle both scores at once. "What's your next move, Mr. Li?" Li Ming had only told Falcone the immediate plan. Start a war with Maroni, eliminate traitors, then call a truce. Beyond that, there was nothing to say. The objective is to be achieved. After the truce, Penguin will become Maroni's right-hand man and continue to provide us with intelligence. It would be ideal if we could take down Maroni, but if not, maintaining the status quo will do. After all, our goal is simply to keep Gotham's underworld from collapsing, isn't it? Li Ming offered that explanation as a bluff. He had other plans involving Falcone himself and had no intention of revealing them. Falcone understood, then sighed in admiration. "Mr. Li's plan is very ingenious. With you as an ally, I feel at ease." Chapter 18, The Penguin's Classic Counterattack, Ding-a-ling. "Mr. Li Ming, it's me, Oswald." The call connected instantly. Penguin had been waiting for Li Ming to ring for a while. He just heard that a bald, brutal man had stormed into the Gotham Police Department alone, demanding Gordon and cutting his way through the station until the detective ran for his life. In Gotham, there was only one bald man Penguin could think of who was that dangerous. Victor Zass, Falcone's enforcer. Fish came by, Oswald reported. She demanded Maroney hand me over. Apparently Maroney refused. He gave Fish two choices, drop it or start a war. As you guessed, Fish chose war. Penguin chuckled with delight. Falcone gave her a lot of leeway. There was no reason to start a full-scale war over someone like me, but Fish can't help herself. To make sure she'd take the bait, I went to her first and offered to shake hands, make peace. I knew she couldn't stand being slighted. She fell for it. Ha ha ha! Penguin luxuriated in having outmaneuvered his old boss. Well done, Oswald. Li Ming didn't hesitate to praise him. After Fish makes her move, you can strike back at Maroney. Nikolai's location is, he went on, giving the details. Also, Maroney's second in command, Frankie. He's the one who exposed you to Falcone. You know what to do, right? Frankie? Penguin repeated, the name bringing a memory to the surface. In the time Penguin had risen in Maroney's ranks, he'd felt Frankie's subtle coolness, his guardedness against a threat to his position. He hadn't expected Frankie to stab him in the back. Penguin smiled. I know what to do, Mr. Li Ming. Fish's declaration of war came quickly. She ordered her hulking henchman Butch to hijack Maroney's arms smuggling truck, an act that enraged Maroney. How did they know that transport route? Maroney raged in Barmont. That run brings me $3 million a week. Frankie tried to calm him. Maybe we can negotiate, offer them some concessions. Penguin chimed in at once. Exactly. The Falcone family's reach is still the greatest. We shouldn't start a war we don't have to. Maroney's temper flared. No, we hit them back, hard, today. Penguin seized the opening. If that's your plan, I happen to know someone who knows where Falcone is weakest. But he offended you before and wants to make peace. Penguin's voice lilted with mischief. A boxer named Lee, Maroney said, frowning, and then recognition hit him. Right, the one who cost me money. Fine, you handle it. Maroney clapped Penguin on the shoulder and strode off. Frankie's face went cold. Maroney's faith in Penguin meant Penguin had risen above him. Frankie simmered. The next day, Penguin led a large contingent of Maroney men to a secluded warehouse. At his nod, the men set a timed charge on the building. The blast tore through the warehouse. Inside, Nikolai and his crew, caught off guard while playing poker, had no time to react. As the smoke cleared, a band of gunmen burst in, spraying bullets. When the shooting stopped, Nikolai and his men were dead. Penguin limped in afterward, surveying the carnage with a satisfied smirk. Told you it would be easy. You're a clever one, Frankie said, handing his rifle to a subordinate as he approached, every syllable sharp with sarcasm. You sound bitter, Penguin replied, sensing the shift in the room. Bitter? Frankie snapped. Then, without warning, he drove his fist into Penguin's midsection. Oswald doubled over. Frankie grabbed him by the collar and hoisted him like a scrawny chicken. Look at you. Maroney's up your back, and you think you're untouchable. One shot is all it'll take. He mimed a gun with his fingers. Bang! I tell the boss Nikolai's men killed you, and your history. He shoved Penguin. Oswald stumbled, but still smiled as if he'd heard a joke. That smile infuriated Frankie more. What's your weakness? Frankie taunted, flaunting his power. What gets to you? Penguin feigned innocence. A weakness? Me? Frankie barked laughter and gestured to the two hulking men at his sides. Tell me, what could you possibly care about? Penguin answered lightly, as if reciting a lesson. If you know what a man wants most, you can make him dead. Frankie, expecting a bluff, grew impatient. Penguin continued, calm and precise. You love money. Money is everything to you. You're a miser. With that, Penguin gave a subtle look. The two men flanking Frankie, Gabe and another, moved without hesitation. In an instant, they had Frankie's arms pinned. What are you doing? Let go. Frankie shouted, stunned and furious. Sorry, Frankie, Gabe said, tightening his grip. Just like he said, cheap as they come. Penguin produced a folding knife and, with clinical motion, stabbed Frankie in the abdomen. The man gasped and staggered as Penguin leaned close. You pay your men poorly. Thieves don't stay loyal for long. He drove the knife in again. I just paid them a little more. They agreed to work for me. As Frankie bled out, Penguin watched Gabe and the other man. They showed no remorse, only the cold pragmatism of men who followed the highest bidder. Penguin thought of Li Ming and the money that had made this betrayal possible. If not for Li Ming's funds, he wouldn't have bought the loyalties that turned the tide so cleanly. The realization deepened Penguin's admiration for the man who'd backed him. After he had stabbed Frankie several times and the life drained from the man, Penguin straightened. The two henchmen shrugged and walked away, untroubled. Penguin's voice was small but sincere. Only my loyalty to Mr. Li Ming is true. Chapter 19. Bruce's First Fight. Because Falcone's and Moroni's key lieutenants died on the same day, Oswald Cobblepot gained favor, and a vacancy opened in the Moroni family. Penguin stepped into Frankie's place and began helping Moroni run the family's affairs, although he still had no real power base of his own. The city's two biggest crime families had bled each other dry. Neither wanted to press on, so both sides backed off and retreated to their corners. After the dramatic chase, at least that's how outsiders described it, Falcone publicly announced he would stop going after Gordon, and the detective's life finally calmed down. The episode raised Gordon's standing in the department. A nickname began to circulate: the man Falcone couldn't kill. "See, I told you, it was a close call, but you're safe now." Gordon was on the phone with Li Ming. The other line sounded upbeat. "A chase like that, and no one was hurt. That almost never happens." Gordon breathed easier. "How's Barbara?" "She's fine. I had her leave early to avoid trouble. She wasn't frightened at all." Gordon frowned. "Then why go to all the trouble of chasing me?" "Falcone claimed you killed Oswald, but Oswald turned up alive. People think you let him go, so Falcone had to make a show of chasing you." Li Ming's voice was matter of fact. "What do you expect us to do, Gordon? Our aims are the same, to keep Gotham steady." "Stable crime?" Gordon scoffed. "Falcone can't stop crime. He can restrain criminals enough to prevent total chaos," Li Ming countered. "And the police can do that too, when they're willing. Can Gotham's criminals ever be fully caught? Not when corruption runs deep inside your own department." Gordon fell silent. Li Ming's words hit home. His partner, Harvey Brock, once as idealistic as Gordon, had been forced by the city to compromise to survive. Gordon had woken something in him. Harvey had followed him and helped overturn things from inside. If not for Harvey, Gordon would have been sold out long ago. And Harvey had his own dark history. The rest of the department were worse. "The reason Falcone is willing to risk the humiliation of letting you live," Li Ming said softly, "is because he respects your conscience. Gotham needs cops like you, and, for better or worse, it needs gang leaders like Falcone. If Moroni replaced Falcone completely, what would happen to the city?" Gordon thought about it, unsettled but unable to dismiss the truth in Li Ming's words. "Maybe, but I still can't compromise with criminals." Li Ming didn't press. He knew the calm was only temporary. When the family started a real war and Gotham descended into chaos, Gordon would have to choose. For now, everything was proceeding according to Li Ming's plan. Meanwhile, Li Ming had taken on a new, softer routine. He started picking Bruce up from school. He brought the boy treats, things Bruce had never been given before. Alfred's meals were good, but snacks were different. Whether they were healthy or not, the treats tasted wonderful. Compared with the time Bruce once had a painkiller-laced burger for breakfast as a makeshift remedy, a few harmless snacks were welcome. Today, though, Bruce came out of the school late and noticeably subdued, jogging toward the car with his head down. "Young master, what's wrong?" Alfred asked. Bruce hesitated then, after gentle prodding from Alfred and Li Ming, admitted the truth. "Someone insulted my mother." Alfred's face darkened. "I hope you beat him until he was spitting teeth." "No," Bruce shook his head. "He's much bigger than me. I wasn't confident." Li Ming understood. Bruce could fight, but he wasn't always sure in a real fight. "Don't tell the school," Bruce muttered, sinking further into his mood. "Of course not," Alfred said quietly. His tenderness toward Bruce was rivaled only by his loyalty to the Waynes. He exchanged a look with Li Ming. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "Of course," Li Ming agreed. "Bullies need to be taught a lesson." Bruce, still sulking, didn't notice Alfred's changed route. When the car stopped, Li Ming and Alfred got out and opened the door. Only then did Bruce realize they hadn't parked at Wayne Manor. Alfred handed him a watch. "This belonged to your father. Don't lose it." Bruce took it and felt Alfred's intention settle on him like armor. Alfred pointed toward a nearby house. "Tommy Elliott's." "Don't be afraid," Alfred said. "If someone touches what's dear to you, you don't have to stand there and take it." Li Ming put his hand on Bruce's shoulder. "We'll be right nearby." Bruce looked down at his father's watch and squared his shoulders. "If I don't do anything, I'd be ashamed. You even know how to use reverse psychology, Li Ming murmured as Bruce walked away. Depends on the situation, Alfred replied. Bruce rung the bell. Tommy opened the door, glanced nervously behind him, then shut it quickly. What are you doing here? Tommy asked, eyes darting. We have unfinished business, Bruce said. Before Tommy could answer, Bruce struck him hard. Tommy yelped, clutching his face. Ow! Are you crazy? You don't dare talk about my mother, Bruce snapped. Bruce didn't stop. He hit Tommy again and again until the taller boy crumpled to the ground. Despite Tommy's size advantage, Bruce's punches were precise and relentless. He hauled Tommy up by the collar and slammed him down once more, every move practiced, every blow landing true. Young Master Bruce. Alfred stepped forward at last, hands out, the voice of a man calling off a pupil. That's enough. Alfred knelt beside the sprawled Tommy. Any broken bones? He asked with mock concern. Tommy pointed at Bruce between gasps. He tried to kill me. Yes, Alfred said placidly. He tried to kill you. His face didn't soften. He leaned closer and fixed Tommy with a look he'd learned to use on unruly guests. Next time you meet the young master, remember this. His voice was low and cold. And remember this too, I didn't stop him. After the lesson, Alfred and Bruce walked back to the car. The boy's frown had vanished. A small, satisfied smile floated across his face. What do you want for dinner? Alfred asked. Pizza. Pizza? Alfred raised an eyebrow at the young master's simple taste. Li Ming already bought pizza today. Bruce's smile widened. That's great. Chapter 20. Batman's first encounter with Catwoman. When Li Ming and the others returned to Wayne Manor, they found a guest waiting outside. Hi, Gordon, Bruce said, then noticed an unfamiliar girl beside him. She looked a little older than Bruce, pretty, round-faced with a few freckles, hair slightly mussed, and quick, cat-like eyes. For a moment, Bruce thought she looked like a scruffy kitten. Come inside, he added. Li Ming stepped forward to welcome them. They all gathered in the study for a brief conversation, and Gordon cut to the point. He handed Bruce a drawing. She says this is the killer of your parents. She says she saw his face. Do you recognize him, Bruce? Bruce shook his head. That night, he hadn't clearly seen the assailant's face, only a glimpse of shiny leather shoes. Li Ming glanced at the sketch. It depicted a common, unremarkable face. Knowing the situation, he suspected the girl was lying. Selina had indeed been in the alley that night and had witnessed the Wayne's murder, but she hadn't seen the killer clearly either. She was trying to avoid juvenile detention and had fed Gordon a story, and Gordon had brought her straight to Wayne Manor. Bruce asked quietly, What's her name? Selina Kyle. Do you believe her? Alfred asked. Gordon nodded. Yes, she says she saw something. She's important. Alfred bristled. You want her to stay here? A street thief under our roof. She's not much older than Bruce, Gordon replied. She's just a kid who saw something she shouldn't have. This is for his safety. There are too many moles in the Gotham Police Department. No, I disagree. Having her here will put young Master Bruce in danger, Alfred insisted. She's also our best chance to find the person who killed my parents, Bruce said, surprising them with the steadiness in his voice. I've decided. She can stay here as long as necessary. Alfred, as guardian, usually deferred to Bruce. Seeing Bruce so determined, he relented. Gordon stood up. Montoya and I are going to find a lawyer she trusts, Alfred snorted. A trustworthy lawyer. In Gotham? Gordon tried to be earnest. If we find the killer, Selina will need to testify. She's critical. Alfred knew how obsessed Bruce was with finding the killer and finally stopped arguing. All right. Selina staying here has its advantages. Li Ming clapped his hands. Frankly, this manor could use a girl around. Alfred looked puzzled. What? It's all too much. Male energy. A little yin would do it good. Do you honestly think young Master Bruce cares about that? Alfred said. Li Ming winked. He's 12. He's curious. Let him learn how to deal with girls now so he won't get fooled later. Alfred was speechless, but with Li Ming's logic and Bruce's insistence, there was nothing more to be said. Once Selina was allowed to stay, Bruce immediately sought her out and made a point of being kind. He protected her whenever he could. Selina treated him like any other boy, indifferent to his wealth or title. That normalcy was exactly what Bruce needed. At school, everyone knew him as the heir to Wayne Enterprises. Classmates either fawned, kept a respectful distance, or mocked him. What he lacked was ordinary friendship. With Selena, things felt simple. They chased each other around the manor and played like regular kids. One morning, Li Ming and the others were sparring in the garden when Selena wandered over. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Boxing," Bruce said, stopping immediately. "Just in case something unexpected happens, I want to be ready." "I'm hungry," Selena said bluntly, as she always did. "Breakfast was at 8, Miss Selena," Alfred said without missing a beat. "You overslept," Bruce added. "There's plenty in the kitchen," Alfred continued. "I'll make something." "No," Bruce began enthusiastically, then Alfred cut him off. "No, I won't. This isn't a hotel." Alfred's barbs were merciless. Li Ming stepped between them to smooth things over. "She's Bruce's guest, Alfred. Be polite." With the vote 2-1, Alfred sighed and gave in. "Fine. You two are indulging her." He took off his gloves and headed for the kitchen. "I'll make waffles." Li Ming shot Selena a look that meant good luck and grinned. Alfred, however, muttered to Li Ming as he walked away, "I didn't expect young master to take a liking to her." "They fit," Li Ming said, settling in for gossip. "One quiet, one lively. Perfect." "Have you been studying girls now?" Alfred asked with mock offense. "I observed the situation," Li Ming said smugly. "You suggested letting Bruce interact with girls so he wouldn't be deceived. Well, it seems he's already smitten with Selena." Alfred glared at him. "After all that, with your thick skin and your talent for meddling, don't go join the gang. Run for mayor instead." They laughed, and the day went on, the household a little livelier now with Selena in it, an unexpected, sharp-edged addition to the quiet, controlled life at Wayne Manor.